Welcome to the WACO meeting, the Water Advisory Committee meeting. Today we have a very, very interesting presentation, two presentations. Before we move into the meeting, I'd like to invite Director Jim Ferryman to lead us on the Pledge of Allegiance.
Place your hand over your heart and join me in saluting the country with the greatest flag in the world. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And I notice Mr. Pierswam is smiling because we're following his Boy Scouts advice. One nation under God. Well, this is a WACO meeting, and I'd like to invite all those who are attending for the first time to stand up, give us your name, so we can recognize you. Anybody attending for the first time?
I'll introduce myself. My name is Casey Anderson. I've just begun this week as the new executive director at Orange County Farm Bureau. I'll be taking Catherine Acacia's place. So I'm glad to be here at this meeting, and thanks for giving me an opportunity.
Thank you and welcome, Casey. Anybody else? Any old-timer who has not been coming for a while? Please show up. We recognize the mayor of the city of Fullerton.
Yes,
That's the
Bruce Whitaker, Mayor of the City of Fullerton. I'm recently reappointed to the OCWD board. I guess I have missed a few meetings in the interim.
Welcome back, Bruce. Well, let's call our favorite director, Linda Ackerman, to give us the report on the status of the Met. Linda?
Wow, I've been upgraded to favorite director. Welcome. I'm happy to be here. I returned from D.C. last night, and it wasn't. Oh, I see others here who were with me. It's actually a bummer when you have to go to bed late and get up early. On the other hand, I just pretend it's almost 10. So I just want to give you just a quick update. I know I talked last time about the drought contingency plan that was being developed on the Colorado River from the lower basin states. That's still moving along. It hasn't been finalized, but it's getting close. Metropolitan received approval to for our 2017 ICS, which is the storage project that we have with Lake Mead. We can store up to 200,000 acre feet in 2017. So that's a good thing. We all the basin states work together to try to raise the level of Lake Mead to prevent that shortage, which now probably won't happen until maybe 2018-19. And I won't talk about that because I know Jim Green will talk a lot about water today. Metropolitan has 3 new directors, Zara Sinayan, representing the city of Glendale, along with Phil Hawkins, who has returned to the board from Central Basin, and Pedro Acetuna. Did I say that correctly? Maybe? Water sales through January were 14.2 thousand acre feet. That's lower than budget and 63,000 acre feet lower than the 5-year average annual sales. But the annual sales are expected to be 1.5 million acre feet. We, as you know, I think have talked about it. We have had an ongoing fixed treatment charge work group to try to address the issue of some stranded assets, mainly treatment plants that we have at Metropolitan. The group came to a consensus of sorts. It doesn't address everyone's concerns. It's hard to make everybody happy in the world of water, right? But it's a step in the right direction. If the Met Board does adopt this fixed charge, treatment charge, MODIC staff will need to work with the board, our board, and its member agencies to determine how to best allocate our share of Met fixed treatment charge within the Met service area. So this led to, at Engineering and Operations, we were presented with a review of a water treatment plant option, including for consideration in this option, was removing Skinner treatment plant modules from service and following, well, this isn't written correctly, but so we're talking about removing, really mothballing part of Skinner and possibly eventually doing the same sort of thing at Jensen. The building would remain, the insides would go. This would save a lot of money for Metropolitan. I think it kind of surprised a lot of the directors, so it was an information item, and it will be brought back for discussion, so we'll kind of update you on that as we go along. I told you also, I think it was in December, we found adult quagga missiles in our system. We have now discovered them almost throughout the system. They were all the way down to Lake Silverwood and Lake Paris, and not adults, but what we call the villageurs, which are the little teeny babies. And when they come in hordes. So this is not a good thing. We treat them with chlorine, which is okay, but it's expensive. And the system is just expensive. So that's not a good thing to happen. They don't have any predators, so we need to come up with that. They have not determined actually, though, for sure whether it's quagga or zebra, but they're equally as bad for our system. The chairman of Metropolitan has started a new special committee. We have a few of those. This will be a Conservation and Local Resources Committee. We're not sure exactly what it will handle, but it will have its first meeting on March 28th, so I'll be bringing back some not issues, but I will continue to talk about that committee as it starts its progress. An interesting side note for those of you who like wildflowers, they're in bloom at Diamond Valley Lake, and it's supposed to be one of the more colorful seasons, and it opened on the 24th. Also, if you like skiing in shirts and shorts, which would be my husband's preference, Squaw Valley is staying open until July 4th this year. The Tahoe area has seen 565 inches of accumulative snowfall. That's over 47 feet. And the seasonal average is 450. And now, I know you're all waiting for my infamous little fact. I actually had two, but I don't want to take up too much time here. I thought this was kind of an interesting one. I can never see when I get off of an airplane. Now you have to think about this. If every home in America had a faucet that dripped once every second, 928 million gallons of water would be wasted every day. So don't let any of your faucets leak. Please.
Well, looks like last year we prayed too much for water, and this year we got plenty. So much that some of us didn't know what to do with it, and it created a very big spectacle on television. 2-3 weeks ago, we saw the world coming to an end because the failure of a big dam and everybody running away. Because news and the media is the way it is. At the end, we are not sure what happened, so we wanted to invite an authority, somebody who can tell us the real deal, what happened in Oroville. So we have invited Jim Green. Mr. Jim Green is the manager of the water system operation for the Metropolitan Water District. He's pretty much the most important man in Metropolitan. He manages almost everybody. He managed about 1,000 people out of the 1,700 people that work for Met. He's in charge of everything that relates to conveyance, treatment, distribution, emergency, anything related to your problems in your district. He is the person to solve the problem. He has been in that position for over 25 years. He actually was the director of water quality, water purification engineer for the 5 treatment plants. So much of the safety of the region was in his hands. He has been in charge of basically delivering the implementation of most of the rules and all the regulations. And he started the Jensen plant, the ozone retrofit project. He has written numerous papers, over 35 papers on water quality, water regulations, and is the person really to call to solve your problems when you have one. He is a registered engineer in the state of California and possesses a grade 5 water treatment license. He received his degree in chemistry from the University of Arizona and a master's degree in environmental engineering from USC. Please, he's going to talk to us about what really happened at Oroville and how that is affecting us today. Please help me welcome Mr. Jim Green.
Well, thank you very much for that very warm introduction. I appreciate that. And thank you all for having me here today. Yes, I am Jim Green. I'm the manager of water system operations at the Metropolitan Water District. And I have been to WACO before. It's probably been at least 5 or 10 years, but I remember being here years ago and presenting to this group. So anyway, it's great to be here today. And again, thank you for having me. Unless you've been out of the country for a month or so, I'm sure you've heard a lot about Lake Oroville. And so what I want to do is give you an update on what's been going on for the last month at Lake Oroville. And so I have lots of pictures for you, and I'll kind of walk you through the sequence of events and what happened. But really, I'd like to answer some of your questions, too. So if you have any questions, please ask. I don't mind being interrupted. But I want to let you know kind of what happened at Oroville and the significance of what happened and what it really means going forward to the water community, not just in Northern California, but Southern California, too. So with that, again, thank you, and I will go ahead and start. And again, if you have any questions, please let me know. So maybe just a little background on Oroville. Just where is it located? Lake Oroville is one of the northernmost reservoirs in the State Water Project system, and I have a diagram here that you can see. It's about 70 miles north of Sacramento, okay? And it's in the Feather River watershed. So it was actually completed, the construction was completed in 1968, so it's a relatively old facility, and it was built for 3 reasons, and this is real important. It was built for water supply, flood control, and recreation. And it is a California State Water Project facility, but believe it or not, the federal government actually paid for a portion of it because of the flood control element associated with it. The water supply and the recreation component was paid by the state of California as well as state water contractors, but the flood control component was paid by the federal government. So again, that's the location, the northern part of the State Water Project system. Now, I want to spend a little bit of time on this diagram, and I know you've seen a lot of these pictures, but let me walk you through it and kind of explain how this system works. There's 3 separate structures associated with the Lake Oroville facility, and it's really important to understand that. The initial reports we got from the media back in early February where the dam was compromised and it could fail and collapse. That's not what happened. The dam is fine. There's 3 completely separate structures here. You got the dam on the far right side of your screen, okay? And the dam is actually the largest earthen dam in the United States when it was built. And the hydroelectric plant, Hyatt hydroelectric plant, is embedded within the base of the dam, Okay, and there's 6 generator units there. So that's a separate structure. Then you got the main spillway, and you can see the main spillway right in the middle of your screen there. The main spillway, the regular spillway, the flood control spillway, all those terms are used interchangeably. That's the main spillway. And what is the main spillway? It's a concrete chute, and you can see it there, and I'll give you some dimensions of it in a little bit. It is a reinforced concrete chute, a very long one. Then and it's a gated structure, meaning you can control the amount of water going down that spillway. Whether it be a small amount or a large amount, it's gated, and the Department of Water Resources can control that. Then you have the emergency spillway, which is on the left side of your screen there. And the emergency spillway is just that. It is truly for an emergency. And it is simply a very long weir structure. Okay? There's no gates. You can't control the flow. So if water goes over that weir structure, it's referred to as an uncontrolled release. And that's what happened, and I'll show you some pictures of that. Okay? And you can see in the emergency spillway, it's native soil. It's trees, it's shrubs, it's dirt, it's power lines, everything's there. It's just, it's basically native soil, whereas the main spillway is the concrete chute. Okay? So 3 separate structures. The structures that were impacted in this event, which we'll talk about, is the main spillway and the emergency spillway. The dam is fine. It was never impacted. There's no issues with the dam. There are some issues with the hydroelectric plant, Hyatt, which is embedded in the base of the dam, and we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Jim,
Yeah.
what's the storm capacity of the Oroville Dam? What sort of flood?
Well, if maybe I can answer it this way, see if I address your question. The capacity of that main spillway is between 150 and 200,000 cubic foot per second. So it's designed, and in the literature, on the low end is 150, and on the high end it's 200,000 cubic foot per second. So that's the getaway capacity through that main spillway. The getaway capacity through the emergency spillway, if you look at the literature, is actually 350,000 cubic foot per second. Now, the challenge that was going on, that the Department of Water Resources had, was this lake was filling faster than they get water out of it. And obviously you don't want to use the emergency spillway because of the consequences, which I'll show you. They couldn't get enough water out of the lake quick enough. And it's because that main spillway was damaged. They were flowing over 100,000 cubic foot per second trying to get water out of there, and they couldn't keep up. They had inflows into the lake of over 200,000 cubic foot per second, inflows. Lake kept rising, couldn't get enough water out.
Jim, if you run the powerhouses full tilt, how does that compare with?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's 6 units, 6 hydroelectric units. Assuming all 6 work, they don't. 5 work today. There's 1 that's out. 14,000 cubic foot per second through the hydroelectric plant. It's small compared to the rest of it. And the hydroelectric plant is out of service right now, and I'll show you some pictures why. It's not operational. Yeah. So there's a question.
Question. My high school classmates, Jeffrey Now and UC Davis, he made a statement in the New Times a couple of weeks ago that the construction spillway was done on some type of soft rock, nice low-grade shale, I think was the technical term to use. Was that known at the time that the dam was originally constructed, from a design perspective? What the geotechnical studies done?
Yeah.
That was part of the original construction.
Yeah, and I do not know the answer to that. I don't know the geology in the area. I can tell you what DWR has told me, and again, I'll show you some pictures, but the upper portion of that spillway is literally sitting on bedrock, the upper portion. The middle section is damaged and compromised now, and I'm speculating here, but I'm assuming it was not built on bedrock. Maybe fill, I don't know. And then the lower portion you'll see is on bedrock. So there is a middle section that it appears was not built on bedrock, and that's just some information I got from discussions with DWR.
So perhaps that section is the one that's got the soft.
Could be, and I'll show you some pictures.
Can we hold really, although he's inviting us to ask the question, I think most of the question will be answered with the graphic that he has for us. So let's hold the question so we have Other speakers coming later, so.
Great. Okay. So let me move on and show you the next. This is the spillway, the main spillway. I just put this in here. This is actually from 2016. This is what it should look like. Okay, you can see water coming down the spillway. This is actually 5,000 cubic foot per second, and I said the design capacity is up to 200,000. So this is 5,000. You can see the energy dissipation blocks at the bottom there, and then the water flows into the Feather River, or referred to as a diversion pool in this area. So that's what it normally looks like: milky white water, clear. It's not turbid. Normal operations. Okay, here's the spillway on February 7th. And like I indicated, that the department wanted to remove as much water as possible because the lake continued to fill. A lot of rains in December, January, and February, and the department was moving a lot of water through the spillway. This is a picture from February 7th. That's when the incident started. The department noticed that the water coming down the spillway was turbid. It was brown, unlike that other picture that I showed you. And the question was, what's going on? So they immediately shut down the spillway. It's a gated structure. They shut it down on February 7th, and they looked at it. And this is what they found, and you can see the red circle there. A very large hole, 250 foot by 180 foot by 30 foot deep, thereabouts. And that was discovered on the 7th. Now, this spillway, just to put this in perspective, this spillway is 3,000 foot long. So that's more than a half a mile. It's a huge structure. 179 feet wide and 20 foot deep chute. Very large structure. And again, the capacity we talked about. So that's what they found initially. Then moving on, here's a side-by-side picture I wanted to share with you. The one on the left is what you just saw from February 7th. The department noticed the hole, but they needed to get water out of the lake for reasons we just discussed. So they continued to flow water at 55,000 cubic foot per second, kind of doing a test. Then they looked at it 3 days later. And the picture on the right is Friday, February 10th, 3 days later. And you can see that the hole started to grow. So they were concerned about that. But they also knew they needed to use the spillway to release the water out of the lake because it was filling fast. So this is just more of an up-close view of the damage, and you can see it started cutting the side of the mountain there. And again, the hole's significant, 20 to 40 foot deep. So this is now early. I'm trying to do this in sequence here. This is now early Saturday morning. So this would be February 11th. Early Saturday morning. And the department's releasing about 55,000 cubic foot per second. They were concerned about the spillway damage, and so they really didn't want to release more than 55,000 cubic foot per second. So you can see the spillway, you can see the water cutting through the side of the mountain. It's not supposed to do that, and then flowing into the Feather River there. The other issue here is that so much debris was coming off the side of the mountain. All that debris was being deposited in the Feather River. So the department experienced what they call high tail race water. The water in the Feather River there, elevation started to rise. And when it started to rise, water started to back up in the outlet tunnels from the hydroelectric plant. And that's why the hydroelectric plant has been out of service ever since. Frankly, the water elevation is just too high, and they need to get that water out of there because of the debris pile. In addition to that, PG&E, in anticipation of the events going on here, literally took out some of the high voltage transmission lines. They removed them to be safe. So they removed some of the lines, the conductors, as well as some of the towers, actually, in anticipation of this event and a potential spill through the emergency spillway. So those are the two reasons why the hydroelectric plant is out of service, and it's still out of service today. So this is moving on to Saturday now. This is also Saturday. Later on Saturday. This is actually 8 a.m. in the morning now, Saturday, February 11th. And the department was trying to get as much water out of the lake, but they couldn't get enough out of the lake through the damaged spillway. So the emergency spillway started to overflow. And that's a picture of it. That's when it just started, 8 in the morning. And you can see the water going over the emergency spillway. And that flow through over the emergency spillway there is 12,000 cubic foot per second. So that's what 12,000 cubic foot per second looks like. And in the main spillway, it's about 55,000 cubic foot per second.
At that time, how much was coming in the river?
Yeah, it peaked at about 200. At this time, this is February 11th, probably in the order of 50 to 100,000
There you go.
CFS. Yeah. So here's a picture on Sunday now. This is Sunday, February 12th. This is the emergency spillway, and the department was very concerned about erosion. And let me explain. You can see the emergency spillway. What is it? It's a very long weir. That's over 1,700 foot long weir there. It's 30 foot high on the right side of your screen. That's the weir structure, and water's cascading over that. And the department looked at this on Sunday and said, we got some erosion concerns, and this is what triggered the evacuation. If you look on the upper right side of your screen, you see that little gully there? That gully is cutting back in towards the lake. And they were concerned about that gully undermining the weir structure. And if that weir structure, I said 30 foot tall, if that gave away, you would have a 20 to 30 foot wall of water coming down the side of the mountain. And that's when the department got nervous, obviously, and the evacuation order happened that Sunday, February 12th, and that's when 180,000 people were evacuated, and we heard about that for that 2-day period. It was at this time the department said, you know what, we don't want any water cascading over the emergency spillway anymore because of the erosion. We're going to move as much as we can through that damaged spillway that I showed you, and that's what they did. Here's a video. It's only a minute, but you might find it interesting. This is just a video that was taken by the department. I'm assuming they used a drone, and you can see water flowing over the emergency spillway, 12,000 CFS, 55,000 CFS through the regular spillway, and you can see the gates. That's a controlled flow. The other one's uncontrolled. You can see that guy standing there looking at that view. And then you can see some of the erosion starting to occur. You can see it's all brown now. There you go. All the shrubs are gone. All the trees are gone. They've been washed away. So this continued for about a little more than a day and a half. And after a day and a half, they were able to get enough water out of the lake so that it stopped overflowing. And then water continued through the main spillway. So, okay, now, this is Monday. Now we're on Monday, February 13th. This is what it looked like after the flows over the emergency spillway stopped. And you can see some of the erosion there. And if you look on the lower left, you can see that gully that I was talking about that was cutting towards the weir structure. That's the one that really triggered the initial evacuation. That's what they're concerned about. But you can see the erosion that occurred. All the vegetation's gone, all the topsoil's gone, and just a lot of rock remaining. So, what did the department do? To their credit, they jumped on this, working with all the local authorities, moved in tons and tons of rock from a local quarry, stockpiled it on site at the Oroville facility, and immediately started to work. They used both trucks and helicopters to position rocks in those areas of erosion on the emergency spillway. And they did that, and they've been doing that ever since. This was on Monday, I indicated, and they've been doing it ever since for the last 3 weeks. So here's a picture of the helicopter depositing rocks. 1,200 tons per hour of rock was deposited. It was significant effort. Here's a picture of the rock and concrete mix, which is being placed in those strategic areas to prevent further erosion. And so it's a rock and a concrete slurry mix that was being used. Here's another good shot showing the rock and concrete slurry mix being placed in strategic locations there. And in this picture, the emergency spillway, it's not shown what it would be on the far right. And you can see the damage that was caused. So, this picture So the water stopped overflowing the emergency spillway on Monday. This is Thursday now, Thursday, February 16th. And you can see just within 4 days, to the department's credit, they were able to patch, if you will, a lot of the erosion. And you can see it in the upper left corner there, all the gray areas. That's rock concrete slurry mix to prevent further erosion. So they really jumped on it. They really did a good job of taking care of that. And you can see the red, brown area where all the native soil's been washed away. And where did that native soil end up? In the Feather River. And I'll show you some pictures of that. Okay, so now I'm going to show you a couple pictures of the main spillway. So the department operated the main spillway for 2 weeks. And they had to because they needed to get all the water out of the lake. They operated it between 100,000 cubic foot per second down to 50,000 cubic foot per second. And they got the lake down to 2.65 million acre foot. It was at 3.55. They got it down to 2.65. So that's a good flood control level. So they got the water out. This picture was taken February 27th, just this Monday. So this is after 2 weeks of operation. You can see essentially in the middle of the spillway there, you have a 150-foot waterfall. Okay, so it's gone. Here's just another picture that puts it in perspective. Remember, this is 3,000-foot long spillway. You can see the damage in the middle of the spillway. Then you can see the side of the mountain that's been basically eroded. It's gone. And then all the deposits on the bottom of the screen into the Feather River that need to be removed.
Hey, Jim, in these close-ups you can see there's no steel in that spillway. So it is not a reinforced.
There is actually steel. I don't have pictures, but I should have put them in here. But there are, and I can't say all of it, but I do have pictures showing rebar. So at least in portions it was reinforced, but I can't say the entire thing. Yeah. That one. Yeah, you're right. I can't see it here, but if you do a close-up, there are some areas that you can see the rebar. So that's a good question. I'll find out if it was the entire 3,000 foot or just portions. Okay, so I put this one in here just to give you this is the energy dissipation blocks that we spoke about. Just to put it in perspective, you can see staff working there. This is how massive this structure is. Just a huge structure. Okay, and now here. These are all the deposits in the bottom of the river. This is Monday, February 27th. You can see all the deposits there, and you see the gray. That's basically rock and concrete. All the fines have been washed away. So that's the rock and concrete. That is 1.7 million cubic yards of debris. And to put that in the diversion pool of the Feather River right there, and to put that in perspective, Oroville Dam is 80 million cubic yards. So 1.7 million cubic yards was washed into the river, just to kind of put that in perspective. This needs to be removed. And if it's not all removed, at least you have to cut a channel through that debris such that you can keep water moving through it so you can fire up the hydroelectric plant. That's the challenge the department has right now. So they're literally, and these are pictures from this week, removing that debris pile. And they're stockpiling it nearby, then ultimately they'll find a long-term home for it. But
Can that be reused like they do for highways?
I would think so. I know, talking to the department, they're literally just stockpiling it within a mile or two radius, and then ultimately they'll move it, reuse it for something else, repurpose it. But the goal here now is not to remove all 1.7 million cubic yards, because that would take months. They need to cut a channel through there so they can get water moving through it. And that's what they're doing. They're trying to cut a channel. Here's some picture. You can see just a massive amount of material that they're working on. This is a picture actually downstream. They're mucking the river downstream. And when I say downstream, I mean just meaning a quarter mile at most. This is just downstream a little bit, trying to remove some of that muck. This is the muck that came from the emergency spillway, not the main spillway. So they're removing that. And then let me give you another video, just a minute, which I think you'll find interesting. This is the debris pile that they're moving. And this was just taken this week. So they got a small army there of construction workers removing the debris pile. You can see the kind of the order of magnitude of it. Yeah. And obviously the main spillway, still a little bit of water in the top cascading.
There's a little hole in the side there on the
Yeah.
small hole.
Yeah, there's two little people, they're standing there, yeah. And I will give the department a lot of credit. I mean, they have really worked with all resources to get this back online as soon as possible. Oh, is that Director Barbie? Yeah.
Jim, two questions. On the emergency spillway not being tied to the bedrock, how big of a problem is that going to be, and are they going to try to repair that? And then second of all, is there any impact to the NIMS letter telling that these folks only work at night and let more water out for the fish downstream?
Yeah, the first question, the NIMS letter, the department, actually that letter went to FERC. FERC received it, said thank you, but we're gonna move the pile as quick as we can, and they're working around the clock, day and night. There was a letter from NOAA, or the Marine Fishery Organization, saying to protect fish, we ask that you only work at night, and then release water during the day, work at night, release water during the day. And FERC and the Department of Water Resources politely said thanks, but no thanks, we can't do that. We need to protect health and safety here. We need to do this work immediately, as quick as we can. So that was the first issue. They're not following the NIMF letter. The other one was the chute. Again, my understanding was portions of it were on bedrock. Other portions might not have been. And your question is, how will they?
No, the emergency spillway, the OG, that's not tied to anything, and that's why they did the evacuation, because there was a fear that that was just going to topple over.
Right. And the question is, what are they going to? How are they going to retrofit going forward?
Repair that and go down to bedrock.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
apply it somehow.
Yeah, and they're looking at that. They've actually convened what they call a board of consultants. DWR did, and that's a requirement from FERC. They convened a board of consultants, and the board of consultants will look at that, both the main spillway and the emergency spillway moving forward. All of what DWR is doing now has to be reviewed by this board of consultants, and this board of consultants is just that, a number of experts in the field of dams and spillway construction. So it's not just DWR's call. Everything has to go through the board of consultants. But they haven't determined what they're going to do moving forward. And I'll actually show you a slide on that too as I close. This is where we are today, just so you know. Storage is at 2.7 million acre foot. They got it down to 2.6. Of course, more water's coming in, but the 2.7 today. Water surface elevation is 846 feet. No releases today through the flood control spillway, none through the hydroelectric plant, although I heard as early as this weekend they might be able to start it up. River valves, somebody asked me about the river valves. There are some very small river valves in the base of the dam. They are not in operation because of the water elevation issue that I spoke about. And water continues to flow in, and there is some precipitation in the forecast, but not a lot. So in that respect, the department's in pretty good shape. Here. Sorry.
What is the spillway elevation?
951. 951 feet is the spillway elevation. Anything beyond that spills. That's 3.55 million acre foot of volume.
Quick, same LA Times article said that the flood control plan for the spillway had not been updated since its construction 50 years ago. Is that true?
I don't know. I don't know. There's a lot of articles that we've read in the LA Times about state water contractors saying they'll pay for this, but they won't pay for that. And most of those articles, from my understanding, are wrong in air. The emergency spillway is earth. It's native soil, as you saw there. It was always meant to be that way. It was never meant to be concrete lined because it's an emergency spillway. The main spillway is a concrete lined chute because it would be used on a regular basis. The emergency spillway, again, was never meant to be concrete lined because it would only be used in a true emergency. But maybe just to wrap up on some the short and long-term goals, and then I can touch on any other questions. So in terms of the short-term goals, the department is first and foremost clearing debris from the river so they can get the hydroelectric plant back in service. They need to be able to get water out of the lake other than the spillways. And so that's what they're working on. They got to get that done. And then allow Oroville's water surface elevation to increase to 860 before resuming the use of flood control spillway. In other words, water elevation will rise, then they'll release some water, let it rise again, release some water, kind of go back, forth, and that's what they're going to do. Continue reinforcement downstream of the emergency spillway. I showed you some of the rock and concrete reinforcement that they've done a really good job on. They want to do that down the side of the mountain and finish that. And then I did speak about convene an independent board of consultants. That is a directive from FERC that DWR has to do. Everything moving forward has to go through this independent board of consultants. And then just to wrap up, kind of the long-term goals, and I think Director Barbie asked this, is to repair or replace the flood control spillway. You saw some initial reports from Director Croyle from DWR saying it would cost $100 million to $200 million. That's 3 weeks old. We don't know what the cost is. You saw the damage. I don't know what the cost is. But it needs to be repaired soon. And it's not going to be a month job. You can see that. It's going to be an extended period of time. So that needs to be done. DWR's instructed to conduct a forensic analysis of the flood control spillway failure. What caused that? A lot of people ask me what happened, what caused it. We don't know. DWR doesn't know. We can speculate. But DWR has 3 months to finish the forensic analysis. And they're not going to lead the forensic analysis. The U.S. Society of Dams is going to do it, along with the Association of State Dam Safety Officials. They're going to convene the forensic analysis review, and they have 3 months to do it. And the last thing is they're going to continue to look at the integrity and the adequacy of that emergency spillway that I showed you there. That is it. I do want to close by saying, a lot of people ask me, well, what does this mean for water supply moving forward? Today, we have a 60% allocation on the state water project. That means contractors get 60% of their full entitlement. Metropolitan gets 1.2 million acre foot of water at a 60% allocation. What does the allocation, is the allocation going to change because of this incident? And the department's answer is they don't know yet. They're still doing the studies. We were very optimistic the allocation would go to an 80% before this incident happened. Now that this incident happened, will it go to 80? To be determined. They haven't got back to us yet. So there is a potential the allocation could be impacted, but we don't know to what degree yet. So, and thank you very much. I know I answered some questions, but if there's more, please let me know. Thank you. Yeah. Director Ackerman.
Jim, I have a question, and I think I've read this or something like this. Some people believe this was caused by cavitation, bubbles acting on the concrete, and that happened, I think, in Grand Canyon, and it also started to happen at Lake Mead, correct?
I did hear that, correct.
And wasn't it a simple solution? They just constructed concrete teeny bridges for the water to flow over?
Yeah.
To dissipate the bubbles?
And the energy, yeah.
And why wasn't that applied to nowhere, do you know?
I don't know. I don't know. I do know, talking to the department, that it's inspected regularly. FERC inspects it on a regular basis. The department, FERC does an annual inspection. The department does quarterly inspections of the spillway. And there is a third-party independent inspector that comes in every 5 years to inspect it. Why they didn't notice anything, I don't know. There's a lot of speculation on what happened. Maybe there was a crack, water gets into the crack, and just like the panels on the Colorado River Aqueduct or the State Water Project, once water gets into the crack, the soil underneath it, you start to create voids. You have a lot of water going over concrete with voids under it. It starts to peel away the concrete. But that's part of that forensic analysis that's due in 3 months. Yeah.
Where did the water go? That may sound like a stupid question. They're trying to figure out what they do with it.
Well, the water all went to the diversion pool, which is part of the Feather River, and then obviously flowing south.
The Feather River became the conduit.
Correct. Feather River, ultimately to the Sacramento River, to the Delta. Some of it's obviously being pumped to Southern California, Central and Southern California, and some of it would flow to the ocean. Correct. Right.
St. Louis raised, did you see any?
I'm sorry?
The San Luis Rey Reservoir. Maybe that's not.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's flowing into the State Water Project, and then whatever's pumped is pumped, and whatever's not pumped is going, Golden Gate. Just so you know, a lot of the water that's being pumped by the main State Water Project pumps, Banks Pumping Plant, a lot of that water is San Joaquin River water, because there's so much snow in the western Sierra. San Joaquin's flowing right to the Delta, just 40,000 CFS, more than ever before. So a lot of that water pumped at the Banks Pumping Plant is San Joaquin water. It's not Northern California Delta water. It's San Joaquin water. It's coming south, though.
Now the snowpack is supposed to be at record high.
Right, and it's melting really quick. It's 80 today here and 60s in the Sierras. Yeah.
Early spring.
Yeah.
Jim, I hate to ask this question, but I think it's sensible. Definitely proof I can answer it out of it.
Yeah.
Any sense as to how this might impact the California, the timing of this California water fix? Or is that too?
Yeah, my understanding is there is no impact. That's still on schedule, the California water fix. Of course, that could change, but at this time, there's no impact on that. I know our general manager's indicated he's working with the new administration now, the Trump administration, and what does that mean on the federal side. But they're still supposed to have the record of decision later on this year.
Two questions. Number one is, what was the flood control benefit of Oroville as it existed? I mean, it seems like it would have been a flow of 200,000 second feet of Oroville, but the city of Oroville had the dam not been there. And number two is this border control going to lower the flood control reservation until the fixes are in? Is that going to have, say, a 4 or 5 year reduction in water supply from the state water company?
Yeah, the second question first I'll touch on. Really good question, and that's what we're concerned about too. The repair on the spillway is not a month fix. It's going to be a multi-month or I don't know, maybe a multi-year fix. And in order to do that, the storage of the lake needs to be lowered. Flood control at this time of the year is 2.8 million acre foot. But to get in there and do that work, maybe they need to lower that even more. And if they lower that even more, that water is not available for later on in the summer and fall periods when you need it. So could that impact the allocation? And that's what I was telling you. DWR has not made a determination on that, but it could impact the allocation moving forward, not only this year, but in the out years. So that is to be determined. Your first question, I'm sorry, I just didn't follow it.
Well, what benefit did the dam, it seems to me, provided a major flood control benefit to Oroville, even as it existed, because the wind flow was 200,000.
Right. Correct. Yeah, I'm not sure what the question was, but your statement's true. I mean, the dam is providing a huge benefit, flood control benefit, and that's why some of those facilities were actually paid by the federal government at the time.
Question also over there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Here.
Hey, Jim, a couple of questions. First, on the facilities up at Oroville, you said only 5 of the 6 generators were working. That's at the dam at the Hyatt plant. There's also another plant below that in Thermal that generates about 11% of the state water project power. So would you comment on in the river valve, which isn't being used, which used to divert the river while the dam was being built? What's this? Those have all had problems. One burned up, the Hyatt plant burned up in a fire, and the others haven't been working really well. What's going on there? And second, according to the figures I have, we're only moving 6,000 cubic feet a second from the delta down. Is there any unused capacity between San Luis and below San Luis Reservoir? I mean, if you're running operations, is there any unused capacity? And if there is, why is there unused capacity when we're sitting with 3 million acre feet of vacant storage in our groundwater basin?
Yeah, I'll take the second question first, if I can. You're talking about pumping at the federal and state pumps, at the Banks and Tracy pumping plant. Combined capacity of 14,700, thereabout, plus or minus. You're right. We're pumping at about half, or the state and federal government are pumping about half that today. And the reason being is because there's no downstream demand. The system can take it, but there's no downstream demand to take that water. Metropolitan is maxed out in terms of taking water into our system. We have very low demands right now. Our demands are about 1,800 acre foot per day. I mean, it's really low for Metropolitan. I mean, high for us is 6, 7, 8,000 acre foot per day. We're at 1,800 today. Really low demands. Just people are conserving and not taking water. So there is capacity to move that water. There's just not the demand downstream to take it, and that's what's happening there.
So no one's filling their groundwater basins?
No, we're filling groundwater basins. Metropolitan's filling our Central Valley, but I always give the example of the straw. The straw is only so big. You can only put so much into the ground at the time, because there's a put capacity. You can only get so much in so fast. But we are putting water in Central Valley. We're putting water through our inland feeder into Diamond Valley Lake. We are filling all our buckets as quick as possible. And I know the other state contractors are trying to do the same thing. But again, demands throughout the state are just so low. That's why that pumping has been reduced considerably. And like I indicated, most of that pumping is actually San Joaquin water, because the San Joaquin River, which flows from the backside of Mammoth north up to the Delta, is flowing at 40,000 cubic foot per second. And I think that's a record. And it's flowing really, really well, so most of that water is going to Banks and the Tracy and then being pumped south. So that's what's happened there. Your comment on Thermalito, Hyatt, and the river valves, yeah, good question. There's different ways of getting water out of the facility up there, the Oroville facility. One is the Hyatt hydroelectric plant. There's 6 units. One was out of service just for some long-term problems they were dealing with. So they had 5 units ready to go, 14,000 cubic foot per second, but they couldn't use it because of the high tail wastewater I spoke about. But once they take care of the water elevation, cut the channel through that debris, they can get those 5 units on and start moving 14,000 cubic foot per second. When they get that done, then they can also potentially use those river valves. Those river valves are operational. They're ready to go. They do work. There were some issues with it years ago, but they do work. Yeah, and they have a capacity of 4,000 CFS. Those 2 big river valves. So those could be used when that water elevation issue is taken care of. Then you talked about the Thermalito facility, and the Thermalito facility is several miles downstream of Hyatt. I didn't show you a picture of it, but it's several miles downstream. It's about half the size of the hydroelectric plant, the Hyatt hydroelectric plant, but that's another way to generate power. It's a pump generation facility. That facility is out of service. It's been out of service for, at least 4 years. There was a big fire on Thanksgiving 4 or 5 years ago, which took out the facility. It's got another 1 to 2 years of rehab and refurbishment before it comes back online. So no power from that facility for another 1 to 2 years. So I hope that addressed most of your questions in terms of how they're operating the system.
We have room for one more question. Sir, you had a question initially. Was it answered already?
Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you.
Again, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, the reservoirs that we use to store water are also in the ground, some of them in the ground, and one of those is the Orange County Groundwater Basin, probably the best managed basin in the United States, maybe in the world. To tell us how they are planning to refill this basin, we have invited an expert, but he's well known by everybody, but he's been in this business so long that sometimes we forget some of his achievements. So allow me to tell you a little bit more about our next speaker, Mr. Philip Anthony. Phil is an elected member of the Orange County Water District Board of Directors. He has been since 1981. He currently serves as first vice president, and he was president of the board from 1993 to 1995, and from 2005 to 2007. He's also a director for the National Water Research Institute. He's a commissioner with the Santa Ana Watershed Project Authority. He's a member of the Groundwater Replenishment System Steering Committee and was formerly chair of the Aqua Region 10. He co-founded the Water Advisory Committee of Orange County, this forum that we are sitting today. He was also a founding member of the Orange County Water District Groundwater Guardian Team, and has served at the Santa Ana River Flood Control Protection Agency since 1988. Director Anthony was awarded the Benjamin Nelson Government Service Award by the Groundwater Foundation. This prestigious award honors and recognizes elected or appointed officials who had significantly advanced environmental and groundwater stewardship. Director Anthony was first elected to the city of Westminster, where he served from 1962 to 1976. He was a mayor in 1972 through 1976. He was next elected to the Orange County Board of Supervisors, where he served from 1976 to 1981, and was the chair in 1979. He also served on the boards of Orange County Sanitation District, the South Coast Air Quality Management District, the Southern California Association of Governments, and the Orange County Local Agency Formation Commission. He is currently president of Philip L. Anthony, Inc., practicing as a real estate developer and an independent public affairs and management consultant. Earlier in his career, Director Anthony worked in aerospace engineering and program management at the Rockwell International Corporation, where he received a NASA Technology Utilization Award and was granted 2 U.S. patents. He also authored several scientific and technical publications and has given numerous presentations. He's widely recognized, is also member or helps the Westminster Boys and Girls Club. He's a member of the Kiwanis. That's a good thing. And I think he also likes to grow avocados. So,
that was not authorized, believe me. But anyway, I think it's pretty clear I've just lived too long. That's just things happen. But anyway, it's good to be with us this morning. We want to talk about another big water feature in the state. This one's not broken, but it's not as full as it'd like to be, and that's the groundwater basin that we're right on right now. Now, our district, by law, is empowered to manage groundwater basin, control how much people pump, charge them for the cost to run it, but we do not actually pump and retail water ourselves. All your city water departments and special districts do that. But the source of an awful lot of water in Orange County is the groundwater basin. And the last 5 years of very low rain, we let the basin go down to keep the supply of water up so you can all keep drinking. But on top of our basin sit 2.4 million people. And their biggest water supply is the groundwater basin itself. And we'll talk about that more later. But what I want to do today is sort of start off with a little bit of the economics and policies about the basin, and then one of our top technical people, John Kennedy, will come on and give you a little more details. Then after that, he and I will answer any questions if we have any time left. But let me see if I can start this for you. Okay. The most important thing about the groundwater basin, besides it's our local supply, it's right here, is that it's cheaper than imported water. And this means an awful lot to the people that do retail the water and the people that, like yourselves, that drink it. Metropolitan Water District treated imported water that goes to your homes to drink now costs about $779 an acre foot. The groundwater, the cost there is two things. The amount we charge people, the replenishment assessment for pumping it so we can run the basin, and then their own pumping cost, but that only totals about $4.99. So you can see that having groundwater available to the retailers and to you, the customers, is extremely important. It has a tremendous impact on the cost of water to all the people that live in Orange County. Now the retailers, the ones that actually pump the water out and pipe it to your homes and businesses, there are about 19 total. 13 of them are city water departments. 5 are special retail water districts, like the Irvine Ranch Water District, the Mesa Water District, and there's one private water company in Orange County that also does the same thing. So those 19 people are the ones that pump the water, pay the costs, either the groundwater cost or the extra water is the higher price Metropolitan water, and they deliver it to all the people and businesses here in Orange County. Now the board of our water district, OCWD, is made up of 7 elected directors like myself from different regions, plus 3 directors appointed by the cities of Anaheim, Fullerton, and Santa Ana. And they have that position because to get them to join our district decades ago, they gave them the right to appoint a director. So then we have those 10 directors are in charge of our district, but 4 of those directors, the 3 cities and 1 other director, are actually on the governing boards of water retailers. So there's obviously a tremendous interest and, in a way, pressure on our board to keep the groundwater supply as big as possible to hold down the cost of water for all of you. Now, the key policies that affect what's going on here, and let me just remind you, this last 5 years of drought, we drew the basin down. It's low today, about as low as we really like it to be, to keep the water supply to all the water users up. But obviously, we all have an interest in filling the basin back up to a happy level, because that's a guarantee of our water supply and a very great piece of security for us. So the policy our board has been adopted, mainly been the pressure from the retailers, try to keep the basin pumping percentage at 75% or more of each retailer's total demand. So 3/4 of your water today is coming from the ground here in Orange County, North Orange County. We also have a policy of trying to keep the basin fuller than it is now. It's now over 300,000 acre feet low. We want to bring it up, maintain it somewhere between 100 and 150,000 acre feet. That's not quite full, but it's full enough to be happy, and it leaves some room in case there's a nice big rainstorm to put the water in the basin. And another rule, which we've sort of been bending lately, if the overdraft gets greater than 350,000 acre feet, then we could reduce the basin pumping percentage. In other words, let the retailers pump less than 75% of their total demand. But that would have the big cost impact. So there's a lot of things here that do put pressure on our board to, one, protect your water supply, but also to try to control the cost for the water you pay. So that's the situation we're in today. Excuse me. And a lot of people have said, God, we had all this rain all of a sudden. There's too much water everywhere. Metropolitan has more than they can use. Why don't you just grab that water and fill up the basin real quick? Well, John's going to explain why you can't do that. Because as a previous speaker mentioned, there are limitations of how fast you can put the water into the groundwater basin. You just can't grab a big bucket of water and throw it in and fill it up in a couple hours. There's some time limits on how fast we can fill it. So I'd like to introduce John Kennedy, who's one of our assistant general managers and one of our top engineers, who's going to give you more details about this. And then if you're still with us, John and I will be happy to answer questions when he's done. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. This is just a slide showing the boundaries of the groundwater basin, and most of you are familiar with this. And the groundwater basin is the northern half of Orange County. I'll move through here. This is an important graph to understand how we operate the groundwater basin. It shows the annual rainfall we get here in Orange County. And we're all aware that we'll have years where it's only raining like 8 inches. The year we're in right now, we may get about 20 inches of rainfall. So we have this variable water supply by Mother Nature. We have dry years, we have wet years. But as Director Anthony mentioned, we have the groundwater producers who want to have a high, stable basin production percentage. They want to pump as much cheap groundwater as they can every year. They avoid treated met water, and so it saves the groundwater producers millions of dollars a year in their water supply cost, that we keep the BPP as high as possible. But how do we do that when we have rainfall amounts that are going up and down? But the way we do that is we rely on the groundwater basin. When you have a dry year, we draw down the groundwater basin. You have another dry year, you draw down the groundwater basin. Then you get a wet year, you fill it back up. So as long as the law of averages continues to exist, we should be okay. We're going to go down and up, but we kind of operate on a long-term average. So here's the current status of the groundwater basin. This is our accumulated overdraft slide. We started this year, see if I can get the pointer here. We started this year right here. We've had 5 really dry years, so the groundwater basin has been overdrafted. So we started this year with an overdraft of about 379,000 acre feet. Now, if this green line was up here at the top, the groundwater basin would be completely full, and we'd be getting complaints from residents in Fountain Valley and Huntington Beach that water was like literally coming up out of the ground. But the groundwater basin is relatively empty. Our overdraft is right here, and started the year with an overdraft of 379,000 acre feet. This past week, Roy Herndon and I were talking. We know the groundwater basin is going to come up. How much? And we're predicting that we're going to get about that's about 50,000, 60,000 acre feet of refill because of how wet it has been this year. This is our best estimate at this time. We won't know for sure how high the basin came up until we take water level measurements in July. But at this point in time, we've had a good year. Storage levels have come up in the groundwater basin. But with my next point here, the drought is not over for Orange County Water District. It took us 5 years to draw down the basin. We're not going to fill the basin up with one wet year. We need to get into kind of a wet period, wet hydrology, and then if we're lucky, Mother Nature will fill up the basin for us. So let's talk about buying water from the Metropolitan Water District. As we're all aware, Metropolitan has a lot of water right now. They're looking for places to put it. Met's storage is going to go up. Met has started this year with storage of about 1.3 million acre feet. Met's projecting their storage levels are going to go up to maybe 2.3 million acre feet. So after this year, Met is going to be in really good shape as far as storage levels. But we buy a lot of untreated full-service water from MWD. We're always pushing our guys at our recharge facilities up in Anaheim. We're always pushing them. Whenever they have extra recharge capacity, take Met water. Right now, our recharge basins up in Anaheim are filled with Santa Ana River flows, and we have water stored behind Prado Dam that we're trying to get out relatively quickly. As soon as we get that water out from Prado Dam, we'll clean our recharge basins up in Anaheim, and then we're going to start taking a lot of Met untreated water. We think we'll be able to start taking large quantities of Met water around June 1st, July 1st for sure. But in general, we're always buying as much Met water as we can and recharging it into the groundwater basin. We actually have a contract where we committed with MODOC to take 650,000 acre feet over 10 years. So typically we say we buy about 65,000 acre feet a year of Met untreated water, and that's pretty much maxing out our capacity with our recharge basins up in Anaheim. And then by doing this, it allows us to set the basin production percentage higher. And then with the higher BPP, we go back to the groundwater producers. They're avoiding paying for treated Met water that costs $979 an acre foot. So we're preparing our budget right now for fiscal year 17-18. We're having meetings with our board. We will be able to maintain the basin production percentage of 75%. We are in our budget right now for this year. We have 50,000 acre feet of water in our budget to allow us to buy that amount of water from Met. We're going to increase it up to 65,000. That's been our long-term goal, have 65,000 acre feet of Met purchases embedded in our budget, embedded in our rate structure. And that water right now costs $6.66 per acre foot. It's expensive water, though, and to do that, we're going to have a healthy increase with our replenishment assessment if our board approves the recommended budget. The replenishment assessment right now is $402 an acre foot. It would go up to $445 an acre foot, and almost all of that increase is because we're going to be buying more untreated Met water. But overall, it's a good thing for Orange County. There's a net savings to the region with more of this water that we can buy. But that's a 10% increase in our rates, and nobody likes to increase their rates, but I think our board will go along with this. Now, the other thing we're doing is because Met has so much water, Mike Marcus, myself, and MODOC staff, we met with Deborah Mann up at Met about a week and a half ago. And Deborah was telling us Met has a lot of water. Met wants to try to get all this water into the region. Met doesn't want to be losing water underneath the Golden Gate Bridge. And Deborah was asking us, can we take more water? And so we are going to take more untreated water. We're going to take maybe another 30,000 acre feet. That's a lot of additional water for us to buy with our recharge facilities up in Anaheim. We're going to suspend some capital projects we were planning to do. We're going to defer some maintenance. We're going to cancel vacations this summer for our guys up in Anaheim. And we think maybe we can take as much as 300 CFS into our recharge basins. So it'll be a lot of water coming down. We would do it all summer. And so we'll see how much we can get. But we've told Met maybe we can do another 30,000 acre feet of purchases for the entire fiscal year. So I wanted to show also for next fiscal year, what do we think will be happening as far as refilling the groundwater basin. So this chart shows the different sources of water that we think will get into the groundwater basin. Base flows coming down the river, storm flows, the groundwater replenishment system. We think we'll be able to get 325,000 acre feet of water into the groundwater basin. At a BPP of 75%, total pumping would be just over 300,000. So we're 22,000 acre foot to the good. So that means we would be refilling the groundwater basin by about 22,000 acre feet. Now, if we can buy another 30,000 acre feet that I just mentioned, we'll be even better. We'll buy 95,000 from Met, and we'll refill the basin by 52,000 acre feet. Now these numbers are conservative numbers. If we have an average year, we would be refilling the basin by about 52,000 acre feet or more. But if we had another dry year, we would not refill the basin by this amount. If we had a wet year, we'd refill the basin by even more than this amount. Just kind of depends on what Mother Nature has in store for us next year. So with that, I showed you our accumulated overdraft slide, and I told you how for the end of the current fiscal year that we're in, we think the accumulated overdraft will decrease to about 320,000 acre feet. And then for next fiscal year, we would be about 50,000 acre feet to the good, so we would come up even more. So by the end of fiscal year 17-18, the overdraft would be up around here, around 270,000 acre feet. So, we've been low. We're definitely making a good move to begin refilling the groundwater basin. So if we are sitting at this point in about 16 months, we would be about 145,000 acre feet away from our target overdraft. Director Anthony mentioned our target overdraft is to have an overdraft of between 100 to 150,000 acre feet. If you use the midpoint there, 125,000, we're shy by about 145,000 acre feet of where we would eventually like to be. So this gets into the topic that I think we wanted to talk about was how could we buy additional water? And I've mentioned how we're maxing out our facilities up at our spreading facilities in Anaheim. So the only way to buy additional water is by the in lieu method. And the in lieu method just means that the cities reduce their normal pumping. So total pumping throughout the groundwater basin might be 300,000 acre-feet a year. If you got all the cities and retail water districts to reduce their pumping by, say, 50,000, then total pumping would be 250,000, and you, by in lieu, you've recharged another 50,000 acre-feet of water. So it's a very efficient way to store water into the groundwater basin. One of the biggest issues is that it's much more expensive. You're now buying treated met water to help you store water into the groundwater basin. So the cost of the water is more than if we just buy untreated met water and recharge it up at Anaheim. We do have a large capacity to take a lot of this water by in lieu. We could be taking around 10,000 acre-feet a month if we did like a basin-wide in lieu program. So you can get a lot of water into the ground. It's just expensive. And so when we met with I mentioned we met with Deborah Mann a few weeks ago. We told her, sell us water, sell us treated in lieu water, but sell it to us at the untreated rate. Give us a discount. It'll be additional sales that Met might not otherwise have. And if you sell it to us at a discount, then we would come back and try to figure out a way to buy it. It's expensive, and we don't have a lot of money just sitting aside that would allow us to buy this. But we did tell Met if you gave it to us at a discount, we would come back to Orange County and try to figure out a way to buy it. Deborah Mann said she could not sell us in lieu water at a discount, primarily because of the lawsuit they have with San Diego. That lawsuit's regarding Met's rate structure, and Met's attorneys have told the Met staff that you can't do anything that kind of monkeys around with the Met rate structure. They're stuck with the existing rate structure. You can't do a special deal that modifies the Met rate structure. So we left that meeting thinking that Met would not have much flexibility to sell us in lieu water at a discount. Just to throw out some numbers to you, I mentioned the cost of in lieu water. The net cost is about $882 an acre foot. I mentioned we would be about 145,000 acre feet of filling the basin. So you would need about $128 million to refill the basin to get it back up to completely full, basically. So that's a lot of money. It's definitely something we couldn't do in 1 year. You could maybe say over 3 or 4 years try to buy all this water. It would cause a big increase to our replenishment assessment. And we are going to talk about this with our board and committees in the next few weeks. But it's expensive. It causes a big increase to your rates, and you have to justify why would you want to do it. And so you're kind of weighing all these factors to try to figure out, do you want to buy a lot of in lieu water to refill the basin quicker. The other thing that you can do is we could just lower the basin production percentage. We could just say we're going to lower the BPP, and all you cities and retail water districts, you'll be reducing your pumping, and you guys can just buy more Met water that costs $979 an acre foot. And then that's a way you can refill the groundwater basin. That puts the financial burden on the cities and retail water districts. They don't like that. They'd rather the water district buy all this water. But that's another option that's out there. So with that's kind of the issue we're struggling with right now. How much Met water to buy. We're going to buy all the Met untreated water that we can. And then the issue is, do you also want to start buying in lieu water, which is a little more expensive, but would help you refill the basin quicker. So I think I kind of teed it up for Jose, you want to? Okay.
Real fast, I read last year, I think it was, that the water district signed a contract with Poseidon on desal water. And I haven't heard you mention that. And all of the talks you're giving, like 666 an acre foot, whatever. Last thing I saw at Poseidon was like $1,600 an acre foot. I was amazed that we even cut a contract with it.
Well, it was just a term sheet. It was a term sheet that said Poseidon, you build the treatment plant down there in Huntington Beach and Orange County Water District, we will look at trying to find a way to distribute the water. So we kind of divided up who does what, and Orange County Water District right now is trying to figure out what it would be the best way to distribute the Poseidon water. So that's where we're at right now. It is more expensive water, and you're trying to weigh what does the future hold for us, and in the future, do we need a project like this, and is it worth paying more to improve our water supply reliability? So
there is no contract with Poseidon. There is a non-binding term sheet that's a few years old, and we're still, looking at it, but there's some very serious questions about it. Do we need that extra water at that high price?
I'm credulous on two things that are going on right now. First of all, that there was no money collected to buy this water as you used it, so we've artificially kept the rates lower than what they should have been. In order, there should be money in the account to buy water. And second of all, with the Poseidon term sheet that you have, which is more all-in cost in San Diego is $2,200, maybe probably not $16, but that's more than twice what the Met water would cost you to buy. So if you were doing that every single year, you could be buying 100,000 acre feet of Met water instead of the 50,000 acre feet of Poseidon water this year without blinking an eye, because you're telling us by pursuing this Poseidon thing that you're willing to spend that amount of money in total equal to 100,000 acre feet of additional water this year, and we're up at 270, or at the end of this year, 320,000 acre feet low in the basin. We're playing crapshoot. If we get 5 to 6 dry years here, and we haven't filled the basin when there's water available to do that, what kind of stupid people are we?
Tell us how you really feel, Per. One of the reasons we're here today is because Per keeps saying that kind of thing at different meetings around Orange County. And, well, it's not quite true, but I think as you heard from John, there are a lot of difficult issues here to deal with, and but we're trying to work it out. And we are refilling the basin, maybe not as fast as we wish we could, but there are some serious physical limitations. We've only got so much space to percolate water down. Right now, all those spaces are full. It's percolating down as fast as it can. Metropolitan will not do the in lieu program like they did years ago by giving us a little discount on their water, but that still might be worked out.
Phil, you're confusing, wait a minute. Phil, you're confusing in lieu water with replenishment water. I'm talking about, slowing down the pumping. I mean, I fully understand that you've got all your sinking basins full until probably September, but right now you could turn the pumps off and start sinking this 10,000 acre feet, essentially sink 10,000 acre feet of water by not pumping it out of the ground. And that can be done today. So that in the next 10 months, that's 100,000 acre feet of water. So we could go from 320 to 220.
I was just wondering, is there any plan, I haven't heard about it, to aggressively expand and enhance that settling capacity, the amount that we can take in from that? Is there any kind of program for that to aggressively, in these times, focus funding towards expanding the amount of intake capacity?
Yeah, we're always looking for opportunities to purchase more land up in the city of Anaheim that expands our recharge capacity. The city of Anaheim, it always irritates them when we buy large chunks of land and, you have a white-collar business working up there, they go out of business, we come in, buy the land and demo the building and build a lake. And Anaheim loses those white-collar jobs and takes the property off the tax roll. So we have this natural tension with Anaheim of how much land can we buy up there. It also gets into how often would you be using that additional recharge capacity. This has been a wet year, and we definitely would have been using that additional recharge capacity. But the previous 5 years, we may not have used that land. Land could have just sat empty the previous 5 years because there was no water. So,
How many basins we bought the last
and yeah, we have been buying basins. We've brought 2 new basins online in the last 5 years. So we are, buying some new recharge basins, but you just can't go out and buy all of Anaheim.
John, I got one question here, just eyeballing your chart, and you go from the dry years, points here.
Yeah.
Take the first derivative, take the slope of these natural recharge plus whatever you've done in history. It looks like your projection is factor of 2 conservative, maybe. So if you look at it, just look at the difference in the slope and you tell me about that.
This projection right here.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, there's so many variables. I don't know if it lends itself to some mathematical equation like you were saying, but we think we'll probably do even better than this projection. But we have to be conservative, with the board, and you want to under-promise and over-perform, Yeah.
John, have you looked at the possibility of lowering the BTP to 60%? You just said 70, so that's kind of a triple amount.
Yeah. That would be another way to refill the basin. We have 19 groundwater producers, and they have made it clear they want the BPP as high as possible every year. Exactly. So it has to be sustainable. So we think 75% is sustainable, and we'll buy as much meltwater as we can. But the other option is just to lower the BPP and tell the producers, you buy that expensive meltwater.
Well, this is an opportunity with better flowing sand and river water, so it doesn't cost anything except for...
Yeah. Yeah, you're just weighing, that's millions and millions of dollars, and you're going to refill the basin a little more, a little quicker. And you're trying to weigh, is it worth that? Director Swan, he feels strongly it's worth that. We look at it as staff, and can we recommend to our board to have Orange County send another $140 million up to MEC?
Anybody want to take my job and answer these questions? We have 2 more questions, Wayne and then Tim.
I'm going to go with what Tim said. Obviously, from this chart, the 75% is too high. If you just take the average there, it's definitely, if you just set the maximum that you wanted to go is 70%, you'd probably be a heck of a lot closer if over the last 10 years you've been taking 70%. So it looks to me like the board of the Orange County Water District is only concerned about the price of water for the producers instead of doing their main job, which is get the underground basin filled up with water. And by simply lowering the suggestion here, 65% or even 60%, yes, the producers have to pay more for water, but you're going to get your basin filled up. You're not going to do it by adding 40,000 acre foot of water. And as a board member of MET, I cannot support MoDOT. I cannot support giving the producers cheaper water just so you can maintain a 75% thing on your water deal. The water provided for the basin, incoming water, is insufficient to support a 75% production rate. And so I think the board should take a hard look at that, trying to maintain that 75%.
Wayne is the current president of the MoDOC board, and we have that recorded. It'll be in writing shortly, and we'll send you a copy to sign. Thank you. Thank you.
My observation is the public knows that they are supposed to reduce their consumption of water, and they've torn out their yards, and the routine. And the other side is the same newspaper has a story that says the snowpacks are at max forever, going back for 200,000 years.
Record highs, right?
And so now we have this sort of public view of everything you said is upside down. Now, everything we heard today, I'm sure if we walked outside and asked the folks, they're going to say, well, you can see where this conversation is going. Any thoughts?
Well, it's just, there's 2 stories. There's the imported story, and then there's our local groundwater story. And you're right, it can get confusing. But it took 5 years for the groundwater basin to become overdrafted like this, and it's going to take several years to have it come back up. But with imported water, you can have one big wet year, and all the imported water reservoirs can be full, and we no longer have an emergency. It's just a, yeah.
And just not belonging to any board or on city board or district board, this is a citizen. It looks to me that basically all you're doing is not building your reserves at a time when you have the opportunity. Yes, it's going to cost a little more, but I think most citizens would recognize that if you convey the message. But what we're trying to do is build our reserves so we don't find ourselves 3 or 4 years from now, again, with the real serious issue of our groundwater not being available. You know, I think this is what bothers me. So many public servants are too concerned, they're unwilling to let the voters know the real issues. Because most of us are conservative enough. When we got extra money, we put it into savings, we put it into our retirement so we can afford to live in the future. And public servants need to be thinking that way and not building your reserve at the time you have that opportunity, I think, is a real mistake and a disservice to the community.
It's good to hear from a real citizen. Thank you. No, I think that's a good point, and that's something I have to think about. Thank you.
One of the challenges I know with the Orange County water district states and the other water districts and cities is that public pressure not to raise the rates on water. We had the drought, we had to reduce, we didn't have the income, we had to raise the rates. And now all the pressure from all the cities, the public officials, don't raise the rates anymore right now.
And we get that all the time.
It's a great way,
We get that all the time.
not the best way sometimes, but a way to kind of, buffer the time between losing this revenue.
See, all citizens are not as wise as this lady right here, but you're right, we get that constant pressure from the citizens, the water users, and their retail agencies to try to keep the fee up and not raise the rates. You've had your allotted question for this meeting, thank you. Okay, the last question for everybody.
Right now, you heard the Met guys say that they can't take any more water because there's no demand, they have no place to put it. So the water to refill the basin is going to the ocean right now. And what everyone misses is, as you fill the basin, you spend money. When it gets to be dry, if you have the RA set right, you get that money back. But you have water in the ground to do that. So I really urge you to, invest, borrow the money if you have to, fill the basin up, and you'll get that money back later on when you draw the basin down in a real dry period, and you'll thank God you did it.
I think we're good.
Thank you for staying 6 more minutes. Give a hand to Orange County Water District. This meeting is adjourned. See you next time.